You're listening to Farang Stories, Plas Deal. Episode 2, The Offer. Morning began with an argument between two crows on the telephone wire outside Pla's window. She listened to them while stirring her coffee, letting the noise fill the spaces where her thoughts were trying to form. The light came slowly into the room, thin and respectful, the kind of light that did not yet trust the heat to behave. She poured the coffee into a tin cup and took it to the balcony. Below, the lane was alive again. The tailor rolling open his shutter, a schoolgirl balancing a breakfast tray for her grandmother, a man wheeling crates of soft drinks past a puddle that refused to dry. The smell of fried garlic climbed like ambition. Pla sipped and thought of the day ahead. Friday, the hospital payment due. She had promised the nurse a transfer by noon. She opened her notebook, drew a line, and began to rearrange the truth. She could make 2 small payments instead of 1 large one. She could tell her mother it was fine that the bill would clear next week. She could promise Ping new shoes next month instead of this one. Words were free. It was the keeping of them that charged interest. Her phone buzzed. "Need you tonight early. Apple's sick. Bring change purse," Pla replied. "Okay, we'll come 4. She finished her coffee and stood for a while, watching the parrot on the balcony opposite. It tilted its head and said, "Good girl," in a man's voice. She smiled without liking it. By 3, the heat had reached its argument with itself. Pla walked slowly, towel over her shoulder, bag against her hip. The pavement burned through her sandals. She chose the shaded side of the street where possible, and the careful rhythm of stepping around motorbikes where not. She stopped at the ATM near the pharmacy, pressed the buttons that measured her effort, and watched the numbers betray her. Balance, 1,812 baht. She withdrew 500. The note came out with a sigh. She folded it in half, slid it into the small pocket of her purse, and imagined its future half for rice and oil, half for the electricity card. At the pharmacy, she asked for her mother's medicine. The woman behind the counter recognized her face and the envelope of coins. "Price same," she said gently. "Inflation only for tourists." Pla thanked her, took the paper bag, and walked on. The lounge opened at 4, but the air inside never changed. It was a mixture of perfume, limes, beer, and the patient resignation of a fan that had lost count of years. Fon stood behind the counter writing numbers in her ledger. Ning was setting tables, her hair tied up, her eyes half closed against the dust. "Apple?" Pla asked. "Hospital," Fon said. "Minor, she says. She will live." Pla nodded. "Then she is lucky." "You too," Fon said. "I give you her hours, extra pay." "Thank you." Fon looked up from the page. "No, thank you. You keep this place decent." Pla smiled a little, unsure how to reply. Compliments in this room were like tips, accepted quietly, spent carefully. The evening began with its usual rehearsal. Bottles polished, glasses aligned, ice buckets filled. Joy arrived late, apologizing to the universe. Wit shouted about onions again. The first customer came in at 5. At 6, the door opened for Ethan Price. He wore the same careful smile and a different shirt, pale blue, the color of money that has been ironed. He waved to Fon, who pretended not to see, then sat at the same stool as before. Pla approached. "Good evening." "Evening," he said. "Same soda, no ice. You remembered last time." "I remember everyone," she said. He nodded, as if the line had been meant kindly, which it had. "How's business?" "Good enough." "Good enough isn't much of a goal. It's a floor, not a ceiling." He laughed, pleased again. "You're wasted in hospitality." "I am paid for it," she said. He studied her face. "You always that sharp?" "Only before the first tip." They both smiled. She left to serve another table. An hour later, the room had filled. Tourists, locals, workers between shifts. Music playing softly. Laughter climbing up the walls like small animals looking for food. Ethan stayed at his stool, slow with his drink. He tipped politely, not generously, but without calculation. He was the sort of man who thought generosity should be noticed. When he stood to leave, He placed a folded bill under the glass and nodded at Pla. In case you want to buy something for yourself. She looked at the note. 500 baht, half a week's vegetables. She kept her expression still. Thank you, she said. He smiled and walked out. Fon came over. You going to keep it? Pla slid the note into the tip jar. We all eat the same rice, she said. Fon watched her. You have pride. Someone must. The rest have bills. Fon laughed quietly. If pride could cook, this street would smell different. In 5, Pla went back to work. That night, walking home, she passed the corner where the streetlight flickered between mercy and interrogation. She stopped at the food stall run by an old couple, ordered rice with basil and egg, and ate standing up. The man at the next table was arguing into his phone, half in English, half in Thai, neither side winning. The smell of petrol drifted from the road. When she finished, she checked her messages. One from her mother, a photograph of Ping in her school uniform, smiling too wide. One from an unknown number. Hope your mother is better. Let me know if you ever need help. Ethan. Pla read it twice, thumb resting on the edge of the screen. She imagined him somewhere near a hotel balcony, glass in hand, composing sentences that sounded like kindness. The word help carried so many shapes. It could mean an envelope, a meal, or a leash. She had seen all three. Years earlier in Rayong, a supervisor had promised overtime to the girls who looked friendly for the clients. She had smiled the wrong way and learned the lesson quietly, that every offer carries arithmetic. You add what they give, subtract what you keep, and hope the answer is not yourself. She locked the phone and walked home. Saturday began without enthusiasm. The sky hung low and grey, the colour of wet cement. The air had already decided to be hot. Pla carried the washing to the basin outside. The first rush of water ran brown, then cleared. She scrubbed each shirt twice, working the soap until it foamed white and obedient. Bubbles drifted down the slope toward the drain, catching bits of lint, dust, and yesterday. When the shirts hung like surrendered flags, she sat on the step to rest her hands. The neighbor's radio played an old love song. A child somewhere practiced counting in English and kept forgetting 6. Small, ordinary noises. The sound of people who still believed the day would behave. At 8:30, she walked to the market. The smell of fish sauce met her before the stalls came into view. Vendors called prices with the rhythm of prayer. She bought basil, onions, and a small bag of rice. She stopped near the moneylender's corner, pretending to study a display of umbrellas. Anand was not there. His assistant, a woman in a pink blouse, sat fanning herself. Kun Pla, she said, smiling without affection. He said, remind you about Tuesday. I remember. Good. Maybe you take advance? Small one? Pla shook her head. No need. Sure? We help our people. Pla smiled thinly. You help your interest. The woman's fan did not stop. Interest is what keeps conversation alive. Pla thanked her and walked on. Outside the temple gates, the pavement shimmered. She stepped inside for shade and quiet. Monks were sweeping leaves with long brooms, the dry rasp of bristles against stone, as steady as breath. She bought a small stick of incense and a jasmine garland from an old woman whose scales had lost their pointer. She knelt on the cool tiles and placed the garland at the altar. The statue of the Buddha looked down without comment. Smoke rose and twisted above the bowl of sand. Pla closed her eyes. She did not ask for miracles. She asked for balance. The world, she thought, was a ledger larger than hers. Good and bad wrote themselves on its pages whether or not she signed. A tourist couple came in, whispering, one of them trying to take a photograph without removing shoes. The monk nearest the door smiled, said nothing, and continued sweeping. Mercy was sometimes quieter than correction. Pla almost smiled. When she left the courtyard, she felt lighter, though the air outside had thickened. She bought a cold drink from a stall and stood under the tree until her pulse slowed. Back home, the room felt smaller. She cooked rice for lunch and ate it sitting on the floor. The fan hummed with its usual resignation. On the wall, The calendar showed a photograph of a waterfall she would never visit. Her phone buzzed. Ethan. No reply last night. Hope I didn't offend. Would you have dinner tonight? No business. Just dinner. She read it twice, thumb hovering over the keys. She typed, I work tonight. The dots appeared, disappeared, then his answer arrived almost at once. Tomorrow then. I'll pick you up after work. It's just food. She placed the phone face down on the table. The lounge opened as usual that afternoon. Crates of beer clinked like coins. The smell of sliced limes promised a decent crowd. Fawn looked up from the invoice sheet. You look serious, she said. Rent due soon. Rent always due soon. Medicine, too, Fawn sighed. If I had a rich uncle, I would lend him to you. Maybe I find one at work. Fawn laughed. If he drinks whiskey, make him pay first. Night gathered its usual brightness. Tourists came, workers came, the sound of money changing hands disguised as laughter. At 9, Ethan arrived. Linen jacket, pale smile. He took his usual stool. Busy? He asked. Enough. You didn't answer me. I work most nights. He leaned forward. Everyone deserves a break. You eat, don't you? Yes. So eat with me. Tomorrow. My treat. She hesitated. You shouldn't ask. I should. Because I can help. The words were soft, almost kind. Yet, she felt her stomach tighten. I don't need help, she said. He smiled. Not yet. He paid, left the same folded note beneath the glass. She slipped it into the tip jar. Fawn saw, said nothing. After closing, Fawn found her outside by the bins, cigarette glowing between fingers. He's trouble, Fawn said. I know, then say no. I did. He'll ask again. I'll say no again. Fawn looked at her closely. You sure? No, Plas said. But I will try. Sunday arrived quiet and slow. Half the city slept late. Plas walked to the temple again, carrying an envelope of coins. The same monks swept, the same smoke rose. She stayed only a few minutes. The air smelled of rain and exhaust. Outside, her phone buzzed. At the beach cafe near the pier. 10 minutes if you can. She stood under the gate a moment. She could ignore it. She should, but the rent notice sat behind her eyes like a bruise. She turned towards the sea. The cafe was almost empty. Tourists drank coconuts. A stray dog slept under a chair. Ethan sat by the rail watching the horizon. He waved her over. Didn't think you'd come, he said. I was nearby. He ordered her a lemon soda without asking. The bottle was sweating with condensation. You work too much, he said. Work feeds my daughter. She's lucky. I try to make it so. He nodded. I have daughters too. Grown. They live in Boston. I send money, they send silence. Plas looked at him properly. The careful clothes could not hide the tiredness. You should visit them. They prefer postcards. He smiled, sad and rehearsed. Listen, I don't want to make this complicated. Life here isn't easy. If you ever need help, real help, I can make it simple. Just for you. No strings, unless you want them. Plas stared at the lemon slice floating in her glass. Why me? Because you're calm. Because you don't pretend. Because I haven't said yes yet. He did not deny it. I'm not asking for much, he said. Dinner, company, conversation. You'd make more in one evening than a week here. No one has to know. She set the glass down. And after that, we see. She stood. Thank you for the soda, he said. Think about it. The offer doesn't go away. I know, she said, and left. The street outside the cafe was lined with vendors closing for the afternoon. She walked slowly past them, the sea at her back, the air heavy with frying oil and rain about to fall. A child tried to sell her a flower garland. She bought one without bargaining. The scent clung to her hand. At the pier, a busker played guitar badly and sang a song about luck. 2 tourists argued about the bill for a taxi they had not yet taken. A beggar slept under a sign that said happy hour. The whole city, Plas thought, lived by exchange money, time, apology. Everyone bought something from someone. She reached the main road just as the rain began, thin and quick. She waited under an awning until it eased, then walked home. The garland was damp, petals falling one by one. That evening, Fon watched her count the till. "You met him," Fon said. Pla didn't look up. "No, your face lies. So does yours sometimes." Fon raised an eyebrow but let it drop. "Be careful. Men like that collect stories. I have enough stories already." That night she did not sleep well. The fan turned lazily above her. She counted her money 3 times. The numbers stayed still, patient as judges. She opened the notebook. Rent, 14 days. Medicine Friday. Ping uniform. She thought of adding a line. Instead, she drew 2 columns. One marked money, the other choices. Under money, she wrote each debt. Under choices, she wrote nothing. She closed the book and placed the damp garland on top. Outside, the parrot across the lane shouted the wrong word and laughed. You've been listening to Farang Stories. If you'd like more tales from Pattaya, Bangkok and beyond, subscribe and share this episode